Dead Snow, I read why someone asked the director, like, so why did you choose to have zombie Nazis? And his answer was something like, well, I just thought, what's worse than a zombie? A zombie Nazi.
Dead Snow is about a group of friends who go out to a cottage in the Norwegian forest to have a cozy time with their friends and girlfriends. And I think it's 4 guys and 4 girls, right? And they arrive at the cabin, but unbeknownst to them, they have entered into the land of the Nazi zombies.
Yes.
It's very much like a grindhouse, like sort of pitch. You feel like to this film, it's just like
Yeah, but I wondered if it was quite original for the time. Like, I feel like Nazi zombies are now part of our media landscape, but were they back then? Was this original for it? Like, are these some of the first Nazi zombies?
I feel like it is, right? I don't know, but maybe
Yeah,
there probably has been some old, B horror movie about Nazi zombies, right?
I don't know. I mean, this is the first one that I came across. We've had Nazi baddies in fantasy films in Indiana Jones, and there was a bit of an Indiana Jones vibe to the folklore of this, like the lore of like these Nazis. So they're on this mountain where the Nazis overtook, because Nazis occupied Norway, and then they were run out of town and they went to the mountains where they froze to death, but like they're still forever watchful of their Nazi gold, And I thought that was a wee bit Indiana Jonesy, but
right, yeah.
The Indiana Jones comparisons probably end there.
Yeah. I just did a quick Wikipedia search to see if this was the first, and it's not. It's a horror trope that started already during World War II. There came out the first Nazi zombie films, King of the Zombies and Revenge of the Zombies, came out during World War II, and there is like Nazi exploitation is a subgenre that includes Nazi zombies, and there's been tons of them before.
Wow, we're learning. That's cool.
Yeah, we're learning.
There's a completely perplexing bit in the opening scene where it's about 4 minutes, or it felt like about 40, of them driving around on a snowmobile with like metal playing in the background.
Yeah.
And there's not even any plot going on. They're just like, it's just showing them like recreational doing that. And I think maybe the film is good for people who would find that thoroughly entertaining, But I'm not like that.
Who would find it thoroughly entertaining to drive around on a snow scooter?
I would love it in real life, but to watch other people do it, like I find that a serious snore. But I mean, I'm just not good at watching sports and stuff on and visually. I did think there was some elements of like creativeness to it. Like there was some creative deaths. There was biting back at zombies. There was luring zombies to the edge of cliffs. There was a good death involving the snowmobile that we're talking about, where like a zombie gets himself stuck in it, and it was good at just like, as soon as you think, for such a low budget film, it starts off quite slow and quite they meet a creepy guy in the woods and maybe there's a bit of a zombie, and then it really does like tumble and snowball, no pun intended, into like zombie armies coming from every section of the mountain, and it just is completely mad. And quite entertaining in the moment.
Yeah, it's got a good pace, right? It starts off slow and it builds. Horror movies like this nowadays would like start off big and then like keep going big, and this one really felt like it just went uphill, like it just escalated the whole time, slowly ramping up in the beginning, and then just and then when you think like now it's at the peak, then it just kept going up and just more and more extreme violence and fun,
Yeah. But did you enjoy the characters? I suppose I felt like I didn't really care for the characters, and although I did say the few moments of ingenuity, I feel like it was pretty generic. I did find it a wee bit exasperatingly by the numbers sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely has a lot of references to other horror movies, and they do the thing where they have a character who is really a horror film nerd, and he keeps referencing horror movies, standing in for the nerdy director is the feeling that you get. And the characters, the characters are lame, but not to a point where I start hating the movie, except for, okay, there is a thing quite early on where immediately there's the 4 guys and the 4 girls, and there's the really hot girl who's single, and she immediately gets interested in like the overweight guy who's kind of gross and always burping, and she starts flirting with him.
Where's that going?
Yeah, well, where it goes is, and we're gonna spoil this pretty straight away, right? Because it's not so much to spoil, and whatever.
Well, the very end we should leave till spoilers.
Yeah,
just because some people like this schlocky stuff,
Yeah, but this is one of the first deaths, so it's like middle of the movie or something.
Yeah, you can give that.
Yeah.
Sex death.
Yeah, sex death, and she's constantly trying to flirt with him, and he's like, oh my god, like, can I even believe that she would be into me? And then he goes to the outhouse to take a shit, and he takes a big shit, and then she comes in, starts sucking his unwashed finger, that you can just he just was wiping himself with, and then she rides him as he's sitting on the toilet. And
yeah, that was dumb.
yeah, and then the very next scene, while she's still in the outhouse, she gets attacked by Nazis, pulled down into the toilet, and then covered in shit, tries to flee, and then she's killed. And this sounds awful. This just sounds horrific when you're telling it. But I still want to ask the question, like, is this a horror trope parody, or is it just a horror trope? Are they making fun of the trope of the sexy girl being interested in the most overweight, grossest guy, and then is just, as soon as she has sex with him, she gets killed? Because I know they're doing it deliberately, right? And like having fun with the trope of that, and like being extreme with it, like.
Or is it just a subversion of tropes? Is it just like, well, wouldn't it be funny if he's actually the one that she goes for? And then, I don't know, there's something that maybe if I was at high school I would have found that fun, but like, now I just thought it was stupid. Like, and also, there may be students. I read a wee synopsis, like, and maybe you described it as like they're students.
Yeah, they're med students.
Yeah, they look about 40.
Yeah.
All of them. Ridiculous. I mean, and it's just, that's a bit of a trope as well, actually, to like cast people that are too old for the characters they're playing. But but they do look glamorous and beautiful and things. But
the girls, the guys don't, except one of them.
Yeah, one of them's pretty hunky, but even he is nerdy hunky. It's like it's a bit of a Hugh Grant hunk, like he's got a nervous energy, but then. I remember even the chubby guy who has sex. Does he not become a bit crass afterwards? Is he not like just going around high-fiving everyone about having sex in the toilet? Or I don't know.
Yeah.
Not that that's that bad.
Yeah, I don't remember even. But they are being very sexist. Like from the opening, they are talking about. I don't even remember what it was, but I was immediately like, oh, this hasn't aged well.
Oh yeah, I remember there being cringy jokes. Like, that's the thing. If it's parody, I didn't really laugh. Like, apart from a couple of the grisly deaths.
Yeah.
I
do feel like that is. I'm not trying to defend it. I'm just saying I think that that thing about the really hot girl being interested in the overweight guy immediately, and then having sex with him, and then immediately getting killed after. I feel like that is the filmmakers being film nerds, and being like, this is a trope, and we're gonna do it to the extreme.
But what is the trope there?
The trope is
that when you have sex you die.
Yeah, that and that in horror movies, like hot girls get interested in ugly guys.
Oh really? I didn't know that was a trope.
Yeah, in like bad slasher movies, like I feel like that's
oh right. And is it? But that's what I mean. Is it like fantasy from the writer? you know.
Maybe, but he's being so overtly gross, this guy. I don't think the director was like, well, this is me. I relate to this overweight guy who's constantly burping and like having a butt crack open and like, you know.
And doing a big poo.
Yeah, and doing a big poo before getting, you know, it must have been deliberate being like, you know, I'm not saying that makes it
I get you.
Or anything.
Is it like anarchy? Is it like, oh, like we're gonna subvert the tropes and we're gonna go silly with it? Like, you know, like he also gets his comeuppance as well. I mean, almost everyone gets their comeuppance.
Yeah.
Although not that they deserve it. I mean, I actually did think it was quite creepy. That's something I wanted to say. Like, while I was watching it, I watched it at night, and at the bits at the start where like the menace is coming in slowly and they're in this hut and they're trying to meet their friend. Their idea was to meet the main guy's girlfriend or something, but she never showed up because presumably she's been killed by zombies.
Yeah.
And we see her running away at the start. But the running away scene at the start is just like modern horror films that are good. Everything they do, they have to an extent, either reinvent or just do in such a slick way that it's really well done, you know, or they're just filming it in a way that's interesting, or the characters are interesting, or, you know, it can either be solid or it can be new. And I feel like this just, although it starts quite solid, it stops being solid, and some of it's just not new at all. Like her running through the woods at the start away from the zombies is just about nothing, you know, because it's like you're just watching a woman running. It's not filmed in an interesting way. It's not, even though it's in an interesting setting, you're just seeing like trees and snow. It's not interesting. And it's just a bit like, well, if you're not going to take the time to make the scenes interesting, why am I taking the time to watch it?
I will say that I thought that the opening, and not in a way that was like new or like fantastic or anything, but there was a funny jump scare subversion in the beginning where they immediately were like, this is not so serious, you know, where they were like,
right.
I don't remember exactly what it is that happens, but they build it up, and it feels like they do a deliberate building it up, and like, here's going to be the jump scare, and then it's like, no, it's here, and it just gets kind of funny instead of like, wah, and like in a like a way that's like you feel like that they couldn't sneak up on her like that, and it just becomes silly, and you don't
totally
get scared.
Remember.
Yeah. I
right
thought
there.
that was kind of funny, you know, and being like, you know, we're just.
I wonder if you're giving them too much credit, Martin. I think they're maybe just not thinking about it, and they're just like, oh, but what if you put him there, you know? Like, I don't think they're thinking he physically couldn't get there, so it's funny. I think they're just thinking, who cares?
But I think they were thinking that this is funny.
Oh,
this jump scare is funny. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, then the problem for me is it wasn't funny.
Okay, fair. Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
But the film was funny though. Like I laughed. Like there was points where I laughed a lot actually. Did you not do that as well?
So this is something I was thinking of. Like, I found it quite good when I watched it, and maybe even quite funny at bits, and some of it just an eye roll or whatever.
Yeah.
But I did find it quite good. But it's one of those films that like a wee while after, I just like. I can only think of bad things to say, which is not nice, you know? Like, why am I thinking that?
Well, I will say, like, you know, that it was, my anticipation was low, but it exceeded my expectation. But it didn't last with me. But I was like, this is funnier and more inventive, and the special effects is better than I was expecting. The main character is the med student who is, he's scared of blood. And
yes, that's the thing. Yeah. So that sounds comedy already. That sounds a bit wah wah.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, I don't know. I liked it, you know, for what it was. I thought that was kind of funny. And then he's scared of blood, and then they give him the rifle, and you just know that he's gonna get sprayed with blood all over. And it's just when it had me. First, it was when they gave him the rifle, and then he was just pointing it at zombies, but he never took a shot, and so infuriating point where you were just like, why is he the one holding the rifle? And then but the point that I really liked was they did the reference to the Evil Dead when they get armed, you know, like in Evil Dead he goes into the shed, the tool shed, and he like, you know, saws off a shotgun, and he takes a chainsaw, and then he like looks into the camera and he says, groovy, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
And here they did the same thing, and they're doing like a montage where they're getting armed, and then he gets the chainsaw, and he just looks at it, and he just looks so disappointed, and you just see in his face that he's like, oh, "Fuck, I'm gonna have to get so much blood on me."
Yeah, I remember that.
And that
so it's quite meta in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. There was a funny scene. There comes the old mysterious man who comes first, who you think is a zombie, but then it just turns out to be a guy who comes there to give exposition.
But he's so crass.
Yeah.
He's so he's like putting out his cigarette in their tea.
Yeah.
And there's such cheesy scenes where they're like putting out their hand for a handshake, and he's like,
Yeah.
I mean, but I did find that entertaining.
Yeah.
I was still totally on board with it at this point. I was like, oh, this is surprisingly quite good, but some bits are unoriginal. But I just think it did bore me a bit as it went on. But anyway, yeah, we're talking about some good things as well. So.
But then he says they were like making fun of his story about Nazi zombies, and then he says, "What will you do when you hold your intestines in your hands?" And they're just looking at him for a bit, and then he says, "Tack för kaffet," and then he walks out. I don't know. Thanks for the coffee. And it's just a very mundane thing to say before you leave.
I wonder if there's a Scandinavian humour that I'm not clicking into. And I do think there's something impressive about the scope of it, like the scale of the zombie attack, if I am thinking of it as low budget,
Yeah. And it is low budget. If you are a B horror movie fan, like I am sort of,
okay,
I think I would recommend this. I would say it's worth a watch. It's better than a lot of the B horror movies that are made today. It has more fun with the tropes, and it is quite inventive with the killings and the murder spree that comes.
Yeah, but it's not as atmospheric or inventive as Overlord, for example. I thought.
Okay.
I
haven't seen that, but yeah.
Was genuinely freaky and genuinely but also had a real bloody sensibility. But to be fair, it's much more recent, and it had a much bigger budget, and it has more interesting creative character decisions, I think. Yeah. So
but
maybe some of you horror nerds will enjoy it. If you're in the mood for a dumb film with Nazis in the snow, and it's a foreign film, so it's you want to feel a wee bit cultured.
It's not a foreign film, it's a Norwegian film.
Okay. Well, it's foreign to us Swedes and Scottish people.
I guess.
They don't speak English, Mårten.
No, but then all American and British films are foreign to me.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you can start calling them foreign films.
Yeah.
Okay, keep me right.
So before we get into spoilers, what would you give this?
4.
4 out of 10. 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10. Yeah. Didn't really do it for me in the end, I'm afraid.
No.
If you stopped me halfway through, I'd probably say 6. But I think by the end of it, I was just a bit whatever.
Okay. I'm always what kind of movie is it, and what's it trying to do? I think a movie like this couldn't get higher than a 7 for me. I'm giving it a 6.
The characters are just a bit unmemorable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just didn't feel like I cared what happened to the characters so much because they didn't feel real to me, I guess.
Yeah. Totally fair. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think the sensibility of the director is just different to mine, which is fine.
Yeah.
That's a classic film thing, and it's and there I can just come in, because we're not any sort of expert reviewers, I can just say 4 out of 10 because we're not on the same wavelength, but I can appreciate what you've done is pretty cool for the sort of film that I do kind of quite I'm quite entertained by a gory film like that, but I wouldn't recommend it actually.
You wouldn't recommend it even to if you meet someone who's I love B horror movies.
I'd say it's not really doing anything new, so maybe don't waste your time.
Okay.
Yeah,
fair.
Maybe. But I'm gonna say some nicer things in spoilers because there's a couple of cool bits at the end.
Yeah.
Are we going to spoilers? Are we digging into spoilers?
We're going into spoilers.
Cool. Right. So to spoiler it up, I think I kind of said it already, the scale of the zombies was cool, and there was something fun about the fact that even after they kill all the zombies, it's the goodies kind of win, although there's only a couple of them left. And then suddenly, they ring a bell or something happens and the mountains shake and then just a million more zombies come up, you know, and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh god, you know. And it is at that point, I kind of like that, you know. I thought that was
Yeah.
quite fun. It was almost like the White Walkers, you know, like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of vibe. Yeah, yeah.
It did give a vibe of when they raise all the dead in the long night or whatever that episode's called, with the White Walkers in Game of Thrones. No, sweet. And yeah, and what and you know, and that's they do have fun with that, you know. And then it's like, okay, we gotta fight for our lives now, and you know, someone brings up like a hammer and a sickle, which I really liked, you know, when they're like, we're gonna fight the Nazis with the communist symbols, and he's just like going at them with a hammer and a sickle. I like that a lot. Cool. You were talking about the snow racer.
The zombie falls into the snowmobile tread thing, and it's very gory.
Yeah, and at one point they just drive the snow racer and just off like a ramp, and they just smash it into a Nazi head. And yeah, and they but the funniest bits, there's a part where he grabs onto like a Nazi intestine, and then he falls off the cliff and he's hanging from the intestine, and then another Nazi zombie comes down and he's like hanging with the Nazi zombie, fighting him while hanging from the intestine of another Nazi zombie from the cliff. And I just thought that was cool, you know?
Yeah, there's some inventive gore, and it was the first time I've seen someone, when they're like, they got a zombie on top of them, instead of getting bitten by the zombie, they bite the zombie's face. You know, I thought that was quite funny. You know, like, or he bites off the nose or something. I don't know, like.
Yeah, and they subverted it several times. Like, first the zombie attacks him, and you think that the zombie bites him, and you know, I felt like they were playing with the tension there of like, if you get bit by a zombie, you become a zombie. So then, you know, it's over. But the zombie bites him, but then when he lifts his head, it's just feathers from the jacket.
Yes, that was good.
And then he bites him again, and then you're like, oh shit, but now he's getting bit in the neck. But then instead, when they release, it's him who has bitten the zombie. And I was like,
right,
cool.
Okay, that does sound quite smart. Yeah.
And then my favorite scene that had me laughing out loud towards the end was when he gets bit in the arm, and they take a long time to show him like, fuck, I gotta cut my arm off, and he's just like, and it's just like, you know,
he has to do it with a chainsaw, doesn't he?
Pulling a rope around his arm, and then takes a chainsaw and saws his own arm off, and you're just like, oh shit, like he's really going there, and it's so hard for him, and he's really pushing himself to the limit to like cut his own arm off. And then immediately as it's done, he's like, oh, I did it. And then a zombie comes up and bites him in the dick. And he just looks so disappointed. Yeah, but it was so funny.
And all he's got is a chainsaw.
Yeah, and he's just like, is he gonna cut his dick off, or is he just gonna become a zombie? You know, I don't remember what he does.
I think someone asks, like, are these the sort of zombies that you do turn into a zombie if you get bitten? And it's like up in the air, like they're not sure about it. So maybe he just sawed his arm off for nothing, you know?
Right.
Interesting, because I don't know if they are those sort of zombies, because they're awoken by a curse, the curse of the gold. Or, you know what, I wonder if Dead Snow 2 would be more fun, you know? I wonder if they would have found their feet then. I think maybe that's the one. I think that was maybe better reviewed, or I'm not sure.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, we can watch it to the next episode if you really want to. I mean, I wasn't gonna.
No. In a couple of years.
Oh, it actually, it does have a higher rating. That's interesting.
Because they'd have more of a budget, and maybe, who knows? Like, maybe if they're getting paid a bit better, they can take a bit more time with some of the elements. I don't know though.
Oh yeah.
Do we have any other things to talk about?
Yeah, there was one, like, the logical sort of discrepancy that I was annoyed at, which is the whole logic of all of that. I know that it's not a film that asks for logic, but the guy, the mysterious guy that comes to talk to them, and he's like, oh, watch out so you don't get killed by the Nazi zombies. And then that night he gets killed for no reason.
Oh yeah. And like how? Yeah, because why is he getting? Well, I think it's because the zombies have woken up because of the gold, and they're just killing everyone in their path.
Oh, okay.
I assume.
But they were already chasing the girl in the snow before they find the gold. So they didn't wake up from the gold.
It's total bullshit then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if they can't even be bothered to work it out, I wouldn't worry about it. But yeah. Well, so Dead Snow, I think we're pretty much. I mean, if you've given it a 6, I've given it a 4. It's straight down the middle on it, you know. And we've given our honest opinions. Like, although I will admit, we watched it a while ago. I think when I sat down to write some notes on it, I became more scathing than I was before. I will admit that, you know. But that's where I've decided to land, you know.
Yeah.
But at the time of watching, I didn't mind it, so I wouldn't totally. I wouldn't want to put people off, I guess.
With the rise of fascism in Europe today, I'm not sure how Norwegian politics is looking, but you know, in Sweden we have the Nazis are making a big comeback in a big, you know, we had a former neo-Nazi party controlling our government right now. The Nazis are already rising from the dead in Scandinavia for real. So in a way, Dead Snow is more true than ever.
Hey, I'm Josh the Scot.
And I'm Mårten the Swede, and this is an excerpt from our film review podcast called The Scot.
And the Swede, where every episode we review a new film and an old film, somewhat related, and then do another shorter recommend of a Scottish film.
And a Swedish film. So yeah, if you want to listen to the whole episodes, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and any podcast streamer of your choice.